corporate guy, the company ensures that they keep upskilling their people. They have workshops and offsites and all of that. But for an entrepreneur, until and unless he says, okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical and go and study, which in most family businesses, you will have your elders say, ki pehle paise kama lo yaar. So I realized that this was a huge gap that we could use. One, for myself. Two, I'm sure there are a lot of people around who also look at this. So that's how Reciprocity came into being.
Because you look larger than life. So reciprocity, the word itself sounds like larger than life. Coming to different kind of minds in the community. How to deal with shit. Let's understand this from you.
I like the way you're framing your questions. They're short, but they're so direct.
And you are very particular about that book club that you're running under Reciprocity. She's been calling me also that aajao, मैं हमेशा बोलती रहती हूँ मैं नहीं जाऊँगी because I don't have time. So, but yes, one day for sure. Let's hear about that.
So, Rashi, when you say I don't have time to read, unfortunately, I can't relate to it. Because I feel reading is something that can be done anytime, anywhere.
Diversity brings beauty, inclusion, and strength. That's as unbeatable as a combination can get. Kanchan Singh Satpathy. She's the founder, director of Reciprocity Pvt Limited, empowering many entrepreneurs and businesses. Kanchan, आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है.
Thank you so much, Rashi, for this welcome.
To start with, Kanchan, I would want you to share your story with the world, how you started.
Okay, so that question sounds really short, but there is a lot behind that because there is a huge story behind it. Because, like we say, we are all little stories in this universe. And so I don't come from an entrepreneurial background because my father was an army officer. I was born into an army officer services family. And but he is a true entrepreneur at heart. I call him the obnoxious entrepreneur because for him, everything is about entrepreneurship. And that's what his soul is. So once he got posted to Delhi and we were here. And then thereafter, he decided to quit the services because he thought that his children deserved more than what just the army could offer. So he started an architectural design consultancy with two partners because he was not an architect. And we were very young then. And I did my schooling from the Army Public School. So we've come from a very protected background of the services. And my father then decided that me and my brother, and we are two siblings, that my daughter, being the elder one, will become an architect because he also comes from a conditioning where he has certain reservations for women. So he thought civil engineer, women, no. An architect is a good role to play. So yeah, that and my brother an engineer. And that's how we went on. And I did my architecture, my brother did his civil engineering. But it just so happened that we didn't work with my father in the company that he had started with his partners for various reasons, because everybody had their own children. So when my brother came back, I had a 2-year stint with the Modis at Modi Care, which is a subsidiary of Godfrey Phillips. And I was their in-house architect to design their redistribution centers all over the country. And then thereafter, when my brother came back and he started a company, a design and construction company, I decided to join. And then, yes, life went on and just kept moving on with that same, thing that, okay, we are entrepreneurs, we are professionals, I'm an architect and I'm a part of a family-run construction company. But at some point, your inner sense does kick in. And I had my daughter, she was about 3-4 years old. And I always wanted to be a civil services officer. I wanted to join the civil services, which made me, say that, okay, let me arm myself with a law degree because I was very fascinated by that. And then I also connected the dots that being a construction company, even if I didn't become a civil services officer, I could still use it back into my construction business. So I finished my law and thereafter, Work was going on as usual. And as architects, and especially if you're doing your own construction also, you're actually in a well, in a very cocooned kind of a well, because all you meet is your clients, you have your own school friends or college friends, and your vendors. So you really don't have life beyond. And I think somewhere inside me, I have this yearning to meet new people, because, and I've said this earlier, when you meet a new person and you make a new friend, it's almost akin to falling in love without too many emotions attached. So, and that's a very nice feeling. So just imagine every time you meet a new person and you take a liking to that person, you're almost feeling like you're in love with that person again. So I was introduced to a networking organization. And when I joined that networking organization, I realized that it was actually a dream come true. I was getting to meet so many people. That was one. And the second is that, when you become a part of a community or a forum or a group of people, somewhere along the way, you start getting a certain kind of validation, which you will not get from your own people. Not because they don't want to give it to you, but because for them, you are there. So that started coming in, and that was great. And like when we find something new, then we want to improvise it. And that's how at some point I realized that the most exciting part of being in a networking was, one, to meet people. Two was the learning. And somewhere along the line, I realized that for an entrepreneur, learning is very limited. For a corporate guy, the company ensures that they keep upskilling their people. They have workshops and offsites and all of that. But for an entrepreneur, until and unless he says, okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical and go and study, which in most family businesses, you will have your elders say, ki pehle paise kama lo yaar. A very standard way of seeing things. Or you have a lot of responsibilities. Why don't you just get, done with that? So I realized that this was a huge gap that we could use. One, for myself. Two, I'm sure there are a lot of people around who also look at this. So that's how Reciprocity came into being, with myself and a friend of mine, where we started this sheerly from the point of view that for any networking organization and for any person to be in networking, you essentially have 10 to 15 people who you really hang out with and who you really can relate to, align yourselves. And if we put in a little bit of learning in all of that and start small and make our own network of these kind of people, it would be great. And this friend of mine came from the corporate background. So he brought in what was required and what was missing from my side, which was the corporate structure. And I brought in my entrepreneurial spirit and my own spirit into this, and we started Reciprocity. And it just fit the bill so well because it just encapsulated everything that we thought it should. And yeah, and that's how Reciprocity came into being. So essentially, Reciprocity is something that satiates our own desires and our own learning agility. And we thought that this will make sense for people around, and that's how we started this.
I was just about to say that because you look larger than life, so reciprocity, the word itself sounds like larger than life, and the funny part is that when I met Kanchan at Reciprocity for the first time, I could not pronounce the word correctly. And one of our close friends used to correct me. I feel like ये कितना difficult सा नाम क्यों रखा है यार इन्होंने? But now I understand why, because it's little class apart. So you've spent years in the design. Okay, there are a lot of people in our circle who are also into the design, industry, architects. What are some key lessons that you would like to share? Because that is the core value you're carrying. You are also a designer, and how you run Reciprocity is also like an architect. You built it with a lot of patience and dealing with all kind of minds. So let's hear.
So Rashi, now that you brought this out, and while you were talking, I was actually thinking back, and I think each conversation we have with people gives more clarity to us. And you're right. So as an architect also, and being a part of a design and construction company where we've been doing a lot of builder work, we do a lot of condominium work. We make apartment complexes and all of that. And, my brother was, he's not with us anymore, but my brother was a larger than life man who loved I would say, the luxuries of life. And every time we would design a particular space, he would look at the finest of things to be put in there. At times, compromising on maybe the functionality or the maintenance or whatever. And I would always come in and say, hey, it looks beautiful, it looks rich, but it's a house, it's not a hotel. You're not going to have 10 people cleaning or, polishing these areas. But he would always say, this is what pulls people, and this is what attracts people, and this is what sells. And I would look at it from a different point of view that, it has to be maintained. It must add value. It must add grace. It should be functional, most importantly. Aesthetics, yes, but functional, because aesthetics after a while will go away because you will get used to it. You buy a Mercedes, you buy a Rolls Royce. For the first 5 days, you're enamored, and then it's just a car. You need to feel petrol and you need to move on. So, and I would always look at things like that. And that's how I've always designed things, even in my college days. So, you have your other colleagues who are architects and they design different. So we get projects and they design differently. And if you look at everyone's design, there is a special thing about each person's design. So somebody is very aesthetic, somebody is very detailed. They will go into the details of how they will put moldings or they'll put carvings, or somebody will look at just straight lines. So similarly, I think I've always been a very, very functional person. And now that you brought this out, I think I use the same ahead in Reciprocity also. So when people tell me, oh, why don't you just, go all out, have so many people, just go all, grow as much as you can. And my first thought in my mind and my first fear is, oh my God, will I be diluting the essence of reciprocity? Will the functionality that I love so much today, will that go away if I dilute it? So yes, I think that's always been there. So I think my mark that I would say is essentially about functionality and aesthetics. That's most important to me. Yes, any design should be comfortable. And I always tell my clients when they thank me that Kanchan, you designed a beautiful space, I always tell them, I only help you put it together because any design, especially residential, has to reflect the person who lives in there because it is your second skin. So yes, I think that's what I bring to my designs and to my work. And I think you're right by saying that this is exactly what I translate into reciprocity too.
Yeah, and the best part is that I've only met her once, and I could gather the vibe because how you build it slowly with a lot of aesthetics and a lot of honesty. Okay, Kanchan, you are also a master in psychology. Now, this is a very important question for community builders to understand. See, I'm also a networker, you're also a networker. Now, coming to different kind of minds in the community, how to deal with shit. Let's understand this from you.
I like the way you're framing your questions. They're short, but they're so direct. Doesn't leave much for the person but being honest and straight. Yes. So Rashi, very interestingly, 2020 is when the pandemic came in, and 2020 is also the year when we had a break in reciprocity in partnership. So my partner decided to move on for his own reasons. And the option at that point would have been that either I go on with reciprocity by myself or I close it down. So I decided that no, I will go on with it. And there was a lot of pressure on work front also in my company because we'd lost my brother in 2018, who was the managing director of the company. He was a Harvard graduate. And he would take care of a lot of things that I had probably no clue about. So 2020, when the pandemic came in, I thought, let's use this time. And I joined IIM Ahmedabad Senior Management Program. And while I did that, I also thought that, okay, I had a friend of mine who was very keen to join psychology. So he said, Kanchan, and he's also an architect. So he said, Kanchan, why don't we do this together? So I said, okay, great. But somewhere along the line, I thought that no, okay, psychology is becoming a little bit of a thing. And really, I mean, how do I need it and all of that? And IIM happened. And my first class of IIM was neuromarketing. And while I was attending that class, I told myself that, this is a signal from the universe to tell you that psychology, it is for everything, whether it is in business, whether it is in people business, whether it is in marketing, whether it is in sales. And since I'm already a part of a curriculum at this moment, I shouldn't step out. And I'm so glad I did, because it helped me both ways. And I realized that after I finished my psychology, and one, it was not very difficult to do it. A master's in psychology was not difficult. And I think that's because every time I would read up something, I would always have an example in my head, which was funny. And at times I would just sit up and see, like, do I have like all kinds of people around me? Because somebody or the other would fit the bill. Because when you read about psychology, it kind of explains to you why certain people behave in a certain way, gives you a justification. And at times, when we hold some things very strongly against people, we don't realize that it's not in their control. At times, we can help them. And when I say help them, one of the most important things that I've learned, and I think we all know about it, but this has come to me so many times reiterated that it's now etched in my head. It's never changing the people around us. It's always changing ourselves, of how we respond to them. And I think that has been one of my very major learnings from all of these studies that I've done, that the other person is not going to stop behaving the way they do. And he or she will not listen to what you tell them. Because for them, that's a blind spot. They think they're right. The only thing that can change is the way you will respond to them, or the way you will react to them, or the way you will treat them. And that is what will get you a changed reaction. So I think in that way, this has really helped me. And yes, it has built a lot of patience, because you understand so much more. You understand people. At times, we're all humans. We give up. We throw our tantrums that, I'm done with this. I can't forever be understanding people around. But the fact of the matter is that if you know something, you have no choice but to accept it. And then this education also gave me a tool to be able to deal with it. What is it that I can do to be able to deal with it better? I'm glad I did it. And I would recommend that, anybody who deals with people on a larger scale, and if you think you get very bothered by how people behave, there is no harm if you can go ahead and do this. I've recommended this course to two of my friends. One of them has already completed it. And, she was like, thank you so much, Kanchan. I would have probably not done it, but for your nudge. And also when they see me do this, they feel it, so at times, they've turned around to say, you really made it look very easy. It wasn't so easy, but yeah, we're glad we did it. So yeah, I mean, it's been a huge help. And mostly understanding how I can respond and react to people.
Okay, so you've also had great experience into the FMCG sector, and you've been with Spice Rack by FPI Organics, and then so tell us your learnings and your challenges that you started and you learned over there. Over to you.
Okay, yeah. So the FMCG sector was one hell of a learning, and a short stint, but yes, it was, I don't know if I could say enjoyable, but a lot of learning. And so this came again, like I told you, my father is an entrepreneur. He's an obnoxious entrepreneur, an obnoxiously positive entrepreneur, and that's what I call him. So at some point, he's like, I want to set up a factory. So I was like, okay, and what factory are we looking at? So for the longest time, he's wanted to put up a potato chips factory. So we were like, and he keeps saying that, look at the amount of potato chips people consume. And it's not difficult to do. And why can't we put it? So I would always say, because it's not the chips, it's not the factory, it's not the consumption, it's the selling. making sure that when a person wants a potato chip, he picks up your brand. That's the whole key to it. Any which ways, at one point, this is just after the pandemic, somebody came to my father. She said, I'm part of the spices board and I'm very keen to start a business of my own into spices. And spices has a lot of market and this and that, and it's a very good business. And I had this insight. So my dad looked at me and I was like, no, dad. So he's like, no, I want to do it. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do it. It's going to be entirely your thing. But yeah, that was only for me to say because that's not really how it happened. It didn't really pan out like that. And he said that, we have to only look at infrastructure, we have to look at administration, and we have to look at how it's all put together and the production and all. The marketing, somebody else will see, and sales, somebody else will see. So I told him, I said, when you're the one who's investing, you really can't, put a blind eye to all of this and say that, okay, somebody else is marketing and sales. So he says, no, I have to do this. So we got into it. So we started doing our researches, we did our branding, we did our packaging, all of that. And you won't believe it, my worst fears came true. Because spice is a very small commodity. It's a very small ticket. But the consumption is in huge scales. Also, the people who are there in the industry and in the market are huge pockets. They've started, and most of them you will see started like some 80, 100 years back. Your MDH and all of these, Everest. And the others who started recently have very deep pockets because then they've hired the right kind of, Bollywood personalities to make sure that they become a household name. So there was a time where I was managing a team of almost 20 plus salespeople. And I knew nothing about sales. So this friend of mine, also my partner who started Reciprocity with me, he was a sales expert. And I called him and I was like, Manish, it's an absolute nightmare. I sleep in the night thinking I have sand slipping out of my hands. Because I am so sure that these sales guys are fooling me somewhere and I'm not being able to get a handle of how to get through this, how to manage these guys. And so he advised me and suggested me a few things. And then I spoke to a lot of other stalwarts in the industry. And then there was this one person who told me, Kanchan, you cannot sit in your office and manage these people. You just have to get to the ground. So for almost a year and a half, 2 years, while we were doing this business and trying to make ourselves available in the domestic market and do retails along with others. So I realized that packaging, branding, manufacturing, processing, all of this was a cakewalk. It was the sales that got the cookie. And at times, there used to be times I would go out in the market to the distributors or the dealers where you are dealing with 25 paisa, 35 paisa per packet and come back to the office, get back to the construction and design side and speak to a client for a project worth 3.5 CR. So I told my father, I said, I mean, do you really see how I'm yo-yoing from like 35 paisa to 3.5 CR? I mean, it's this huge spectrum. And then you're dealing with feedbacks of how people are saying, somebody says the spice was too spicy, it was too hot, it was too less. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot of learning, lot of understanding. And like I said, sales, especially in the FMCG sector, in this particular niche of spices, was quite a revelation because, and I have so much more respect for these FMCG companies and for these dealers and these people out there who make sure that we get all these new products. It's not easy. And even the smaller companies who manage to make it big, it's not easy. It's very tough. And that's when, after almost about a year and a half, we decided that we are not going to be able to do retail in the FMCG and a design construction company. So we decided that, okay, we will stick to exports. Thankfully, we did get 1 or 2, immediate queries and orders on exports, and that's how we stuck to it. So as of now, the FMCG sector is very, very limited to exports only, which is easily manageable because the orders come in and you have to look at the other. But yes, it was a huge learning. And like I told you that I was dealing with 35 paisa to 33.5 CR. That was the difference that I was dealing in terms of numbers. But it was interesting and a lot of learning. And I think if I hadn't had this opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to get to this side of the sector.
Absolutely wonderful. And also, Kanchan, people are also like numbers, Some will be 35 paisa kind of quality people, and some will be 3.5 CR. Everything counts on the attitude and the approach and the behavior. And I think that is what we learn as networkers, that how to deal and how much time and energy one has to give. This is wonderful. So I also know, Kanchan, about you that you're a book lover. Okay. And you are very particular about that book club that you're running under Reciprocity. So she's been calling me also that aa jao, main hamesha bolti rehti hu, nahi jaungi because I don't have time. So, but yes, one day for sure. Let's hear about that.
So, Rashi, when you say I don't have time to read, unfortunately, I can't relate to it because I feel reading is something that can be done anytime, anywhere. It's just that we should want to do it. So, I was not always this person that you see today and or here today. And but I would love to read. I remember myself as a kid also. I used to love to read. I used to be taken to a bookshop by my grandfather, and at times, in about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, I would have finished 2 to 3 books standing there. And then my grandfather would turn around to say, "Do we want to buy something?" So, like these I've read now, so we'll buy these. So yeah, so books have always been there, but I was more into fiction reading earlier until a couple of years back, when I started reading nonfiction, and and then this book club came into being, and this book club came into being with just one thought process. And also, I must add here that my friend and my erstwhile partner at Reciprocity, Manish, um, he is the one who said that, okay, Kanchan, let's start a book club because let's bring reading into our lives as a structure and as a discipline. So we said, okay. And I was very skeptical at first. I said, like, you and me will probably read, but will everybody else read? So he said, let's see, we will figure that out. So we started the book club with a couple of friends. First we were 2-3 of us, and initially, people joined the book club like, yeah, it's a great idea, yeah. And it was on a Sunday morning, and let's read the book in game. So we started, that okay, each person will recommend a book so that we're not stuck to one person's genre, and the book shouldn't be more than 300 pages so that you can read it in a fortnight. And then the next thing that came was that don't come without reading the book because we are not doing justice, because we are not going to be doing a page reading there or book reading session there. The idea is that each one of us reads a book and we say what impacts us most from that book. So whether it is 3 things or 4 things or 5 things or 2 things. And what is the most important key takeaway? How is it going to help us in our lives or businesses? So since it is non-fiction, it would either be to personal or professional development. And I realized that in a group of people, everybody reads the same set of words, but has a very different understanding of the same book. And that understanding comes from who the person is. So if the person is of a very spiritual bent of mind, you will always find a very spiritual, perspective of that person. If the person is very rational, very, very practical, very logical, you'll have that. If the person comes from a very marketing kind of a thing, a background, a strategic kind of a thought process, that's what they will pick up. And they will also resonate with the same. And in spite of the fact that they already have that in them, they will still pick up something from there to say, okay, this is more that I'd like to add. So which was very interesting. And that's how we started, and we just kept going. And then I realized somewhere along the line that, I also had somebody say that, we read so many books, Kanchan, do we implement them? Because some people come with the thought process कि मैंने 10 चीजें पढ़ी हैं, इसमें से मैंने implement क्या किया? So I would tell them, because I realized this, that at times in my conversations, I wouldn't think of what I have to say, but some things I had read somewhere would subconsciously come in my communication. And that's when I realized that when we read, we are actually updating the software in our brains. And it automatically comes out in our communication. So if somebody would say that, like you told me that, or if anybody would tell me that, let's say 10 minutes later, you speak to me about this point, some things will not come to my mind. But okay, what do I have to say? I'll be blank. But the minute I start conversations, automatically things start coming out. And that means somewhere the supercomputer has kicked in, picked up the data that was stored somewhere, and it's already coming out. So that's what I told them. And initially, they looked at me. I was like, just observe yourself over a period of time, and you will realize that there will be so much that you are talking, which if you think you wouldn't recollect instantly, but it's there inside. So I think that was one of the reasons the book club was started, and it is still going strong. It's about 5 years now. And yes, I tell everybody that you must join the book club. Up till now, the book club was an absolutely free venture. We would tell people that come and join. Until one day we said, okay, fine, let's do something good about it. And we put a small membership fees to it. And you'll be surprised that we have more people now than we thought we had earlier. And most importantly, time to read. I at times wake up at 4:35 in the morning, just like that, not with the intent to read. But what do? We pick up the phone, we start scrolling. I've started reading. It could just be 20 minutes, but that helps me uh, actually calm my mind. And believe me, there is nothing better to go back to sleep than reading. So even if it's 20 minutes, you can always find time to read at least 20 minutes in a day. So yeah, that's how. So the book club is one of the most precious things for me. And going for the book club is an entirely different experience.
I can totally relate to what she's saying, because if you're passionate about something and you are convinced about passing that passion to someone else, you'll be able to easily do it. So when she's talking about reading, I do a lot of writing because I have to podcast. So when I get up 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm writing, I'm making scripts. So I think it is more about your passion and the interest, and if you're convinced, people will be convinced by you. That's for sure. This is wonderful. Okay, Kanchan, what is your one special message to all the communities out there?
Okay, so I think my most often said words are, don't let learning become a dormant part of your life, because that's when you will stagnate. That's when you will stop looking forward, and that's when life will come to a halt for you. The most important part of any human being is to learn, and actually not just human being, any being that breathes is to learn. And being learning agile is so important because it keeps us on our toes. It gives us the zest to live, the zest to move on. So I think learning agility is something that I would tell anybody and everybody. Don't let that become garbage.
Okay, Kanchan, what has been your success mantra? Tell us in short.
Now that question makes me think, because I don't think I am successful. I am a work in progress. And I think that's my mantra. It's an absolute work in progress. And there is so much more to do. As a matter of fact, I am known in my circle of reciprocity and friends that I am open to starting work or starting a new business anytime. Recently, a young lawyer in my group approached me and said, Kanchan, you're a lawyer, and why don't you and me start a law firm? He's a young guy, and I looked at him like, yeah, great. So he's like, is that it? I'm like, yeah, let's start. So he said, you don't want to think? I was like, no, let's put a name to the firm and let's start work. And so somebody else said that, how do you just jump to this? I said, well, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to probably learn another skill of how to probably run a law firm. I may succeed, I may not succeed, but I will learn in both ways. So there is no success mantra. I am just a work in progress, trying to make myself a better person each day.
So, since we are talking on this, there is a question coming to my mind. One is that you are networking. Second is that you're collaborating. Okay. Now, most of the people like to meet other people, give their peace of mind. But when you're collaborating, you have to take that peace of mind also.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that? Let's hear.
So that's a very important point that you picked up, Rashi. Collaboration is actually just the way to go through. And let's say in today's day and date, it's imperative, if not important, to collaborate, because one person or one company doing everything is a huge order. And somewhere you will also compromise on the quality. Now, whether it is a manufacturing, whether it is service industry, any kind of an industry that might be, it's very important that you collaborate, because uh, everybody has a specialty. And if you try and do everything yourself, there will be something that will not be up to the standard that you would want to dish out. And I always keep saying this to my members also, that at times, so reciprocity is also one forum where we don't say that only one person from one category or classification to be there. And when people ask me, why don't you do that, Kanchan? I tell them that, maximum collaborations happen from people of the same industry. And that's how it should be. No two people will be exactly of the same skill set. So if there are two people of the same industry with different skill sets, just imagine the kind of impact you can make if you collaborate together. And that is why it is important. And one of my most known examples, which my new members or guests who've come, and when they ask me this question, would have heard from me, is that outside a hospital, you have 6 to 8 chemist shops all in one line. Each one of them thrives. They have their own USPs, but the most important part that they do is they collaborate. If one doesn't have a medicine, the boy runs and gets it from the other. If one doesn't have something, another one will get it. So I think collaboration is very important, and it is the need of the hour to collaborate. And you're right. There is a very thin line which says that if you're doing your business yourself, where you call the shots, you can do what you feel like. But when you collaborate, you need to also listen to what the other person says. But which is so important, because that's when you learn. So I think everything will come back. So in my case, like I said, that I'm a very, very learning agile person and very, very attracted towards learning. I find learning in everything. So I realize that, if I don't listen, how will I learn and bring myself up to the mark of what the other person is offering? So I think collaboration, one, ups your product, your value, and most importantly, gives you the opportunity to learn.
So, when collaborations fail, there is a lot of pain and a lot of, it's not a good scene, honestly. How do you deal with that? Let's hear.
So when collaborations fail or partnerships fail, there are various reasons. And yes, there is a lot of heartbreak. So if, like when I started saying, when you meet a new person, it's almost akin to falling in love. And when a partnership fails, you almost feel as a failure of that particular relationship. It's not, so it's never a company that fails. It's a partnership that fails, or it's a collaboration that fails. And the failure is not because of one person. It's always because of two people. It always takes two to tango. It's never one person. One understanding the other responding, reacting in an adverse way. There at times could also be very genuine reasons for a collaboration or a partnership to not go further. But I think what is most important is for us to understand the nuance as to why it has happened, not hold it back within ourselves to say it's failed. So the word failure comes with a lot of negativity. If I would rather replace that saying that, okay, the role of this person in this project is now over. It's like you hired somebody. So even if you hire a senior person and the person leaves, the management doesn't feel very good. change is not accepted by us well. And that's the essence of it all. So it's not about partnership, collaborating, or any of these things failing. It's the change. We're not willing to take that change because we're in a comfort level. Yes, there are certain times when things take a very different turn because uh, there's another thing at play, which is expectations. So and so didn't do this, or so and so did this. Well, those are small things. Look at the macro level of everything. We are all work in progress, and there are so many nuances and so many aspects to all of us that not every aspect of us can be understood by the other, or we can understand the other. There will be these things, and we should take them in stride. Relationships and families fail. So I think acceptance is the biggest thing, whether it is failure or of the person or of the situation. If you accept things, it just becomes so much more easier to accept the situation.
Yeah, and that is a great point to be, taken from this conversation, that failures are also the key to success. And if you fail once, it doesn't mean that you'll fail the second time. So keep trying and keep moving.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely wonderful. If somebody wants to join Reciprocity and reach out to you, what would be the schedules and how to go about it? Let's hear.
Okay, so reciprocity is a morning thing. And so we've had a lot of people ask us, Kanchan, if you would do reciprocity in the afternoon, I'd love to come. If it was in the evening, I would surely be a part of it. I've had very lame excuses. I've had a Sikh gentleman say, it's very difficult to tie a turban early in the morning. And the lamest of excuses. Evenings at times it becomes late to sleep and it's difficult to get up in the morning, or I wake up and I don't want to come. But see, the thing is that the morning time is as dear to me as it is to anybody else. We all hate waking up in the morning. But for an entrepreneur, what is important is the time that they get to work in the day. Especially in Delhi NCR, or let's say the northern part of the country, 10 a.m. is generally the time where people are switched on. Okay, now they start getting calls again, which is why reciprocity is in the morning. We've tried all times and we realized that was the best. And so the coffee meet is something that we started last year, and which is a casual meetup once a month. So we tell people that if you want to get a taste of what reciprocity members are all about, come and meet us once a month on a Saturday afternoon, 4 to 6, for a coffee meet. Because that way, one, you will get to meet members in a very casual, meet and greet kind of a situation. Two, so a lot of people, guests who attend reciprocity and the meeting, they turn around to say that there is so much intellectual stimulation that at times it becomes a little intimidating. So, and I get that. Probably, somebody who's not used to something like this can say that. Also, because when you meet in a formal setting, you really do not have the option to break ice, to get to know the other person. So the reciprocity coffee meet offers all of this. There is really no structure. We just let it flow. We just speak about people and what they like to do, what they are, their hobbies, how they like to spend time, anything and everything but for their work, because that is something we're all tutored to speak. I do so and so and so, so and so, so and so. But the minute you ask them, okay, what do you do in your off time, or what is your hobbies, or how do you like to spend time? That's when you see them, okay, take a step back, take a deep breath, and then say, okay, I can share now. So yeah, that's what the coffee meet brings, that it brings you that comfort level to break ice with people and get to know members of reciprocity, where they say, okay, these are nice people, and they are not just a lot of intellectual conversations. No, they're nice people. They're like you and me. They laugh. They, have a lot of humor. And that's exactly what a coffee meet is. There is a lot of humor. There's a lot of camaraderie amongst us, which makes a person who comes then in the evening to meet us very comfortable. And like if we have to take a flight at 5 a.m., we take it. So if you are drawn to something, you will prioritize that time. But if you don't know what you're getting into, you may not. So which is the reason we have it.
Kanchan champions in diversity, inclusion, especially for business. Get in touch with her. All her details, reciprocity details, are available on the podcast. Speak to her, understand, and I think it's like a touch of a different kind of a fresh breath air. So just get in touch with her. आपको बहुत मजा आएगा. मैं खुद भी चली गई थी एक बार, अब मैं दोबारा से जाऊंगी कॉफी मीट के लिए, and I'm going to join it, and I invite all our listeners and our viewers to get in touch and speak to Kanchan. Kanchan, आपका बहुत बहुत thanks है कि आप आए.
Thank you so much, Rashi, for giving me the opportunity to share not just my journey, but also reminisce about how Reciprocity started. And it's a great feeling to, talk about it all over again. So thank you so much. Love being here and having this conversation.